That'd be great. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to This Pink Cloud. We are a show all about recovery, multiple pathways to recovery. I am DJ Kelly Reverb. Oh, Chad, you're slacking today. You're out of it, dude. The flatulence noise, always.
There you go, man.
I am an RSPS, but we celebrate multiple pathways on this show. If you like what we're talking about, obviously, please hit subscribe, like, share, all that kind of stuff. Sitting in with me, as always, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chad Lamons. What's up, buddy boy?
Much, dude. Thank you for that badass sound effect, man. You're doing a really good job today. There you go, man.
All right, so how long does that go on for?
It's too long, dude.
Isn't there's like an eternal drum roll we have too, right?
Yeah, too long. Oh yeah, that drum roll is like 30-something seconds.
I love it. Okay, so I am super excited about having this young lady on the show. Let me kind of frame it. So my mom passed away around 2 years ago, and I dove into the whole NDE thing, which is near-death experience. So I watch a lot of podcasts because obviously I want to try to find out what the hell's going on, after this, or what's going on right now in this existence. So I came across, she was on another podcast, and she had a fantastic story. And her story also, not only did it entail an NDE, but it also entailed recovery, and it's a doozy. I'm not gonna lie, it was a doozy. And I know if we go deeper, the deeper we go, the better it gets. So without further ado, all the way from New York City, I'm going to say Betty G, because I'm not going to butcher her last name, but she also goes by Buddha Betty on social. And she is actually a CRPA, which is a Certified Recovery Peer Advocate, all the way from New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, Betty G, how are you?
So grateful to be here. This is like real morning radio vibes with all the sound effects. I'm totally loving it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So, we try to keep it fun and light because, why get clean to be miserable,
Oh my goodness, definitely.
Well, so why don't you start us off? I mean, obviously I touched on the NDE, which is a huge part of your story. But I mean, I was hearing the recovery part of your story on the other show, and I was like, oh my God, she did what? So why don't you take us back and kind of let the audience know where you are coming from?
Okay, cool. Yeah. Again, thank you so much for allowing me an opportunity to share. I'm really grateful for the space that you guys have created. It's so necessary. And yeah, you're doing really great work for the collective. So thank you for allowing me to be part of
I
this.
am, but Chad, not so much.
Man, every time, dude. Every time.
I always just have to kind of shit on Chad. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Chad.
Well, he knows.
Chad, I am here to affirm you and your presence. You are doing great things.
You're my favorite. You're my favorite already.
So let me just share that I've been in recovery. My clean date is June 1st, 2019. So I have a little over 4 years in recovery right now. I was the end narrative of my active. Am I allowed to say all words, or
you
should
can
I
say
censor
all?
myself?
You can use your words.
You can say whatever you want.
Yes.
So the end narrative of my active addiction was that I was a homeless meth head prostitute strung out on heroin. That is where drugs and alcohol took me. I mean, it wasn't always like that. Obviously, this is the progression of the dis-ease of addiction.
Right.
And that was my bottom. And I've hit many, many bottoms over the course of my life. But this is where Yeah, the end. Yeah, that's where the end narrative took me. And I got clean because I had this very spiritually transformative experience in an overdose. I
Mm-hmm.
got so high that I met God.
Well, so did you
And
have
God was like, go ahead.
multiple overdoses, or was it
This
just
was
a one time?
this overdose that I experienced in 2019 was actually an overdose of hallucinogens.
Mm-hmm.
I ate about 8.5 grams of mushrooms to go do my laundry
Well,
because that's the kind of life that
congratulations.
I was living.
Hell yeah.
That's a good call.
Yeah, yeah, really. I was like, I might as well be wavy to do this mundane human task of laundry, you
Right.
know? And my brain cracked open, like in this most insane way. And I had no language for what had happened to me. And I didn't really receive language until almost 2 years after my experience. And that's when I came across near death experiences. And as I listened to people explain their experience, I had like this, yeah, this white light moment where I was like, oh my goodness, that's what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I just actually died and that I was stuck in purgatory. Like I got so high and like, yeah, I felt like I met God and God was like, girl, you got to get it
Right.
together.
Right.
Like there was a couple of messages that were really loud and clear in my spiritual experience. One of them was you have to go back to earth, big time bummer. The other message in my near death experience was that I had chosen everything that had happened to me in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of really helped me shift out of my victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And the other message was you have to stop using drugs. And I just thought, wow, I'm so high right now that drugs are breaking up with me. This is crazy.
That's funny.
So my spiritual experience, it led me into recovery in kind of this forced shift sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did not want recovery. I come from a whole family of addicts. It's all that we're taught growing up
Yeah,
is
well,
how to use.
let's dive into that. As far as like, what did you grow up in?
Sure. Let me open up my trauma trunk for you.
Yes, please.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Buckle up. So yeah, like I grew up in this really chaotic, dysfunctional home. My whole family is a perpetual cycle of addiction and poverty and molestation and incest and rape. And so you're taught at a really young age to start using because it helps you cope with what your experience is. And so, like I learned how to use drugs from my family. I watched my parents. Like I don't mean that my parents shot me up with drugs or anything, but I saw that when they were
Right.
experiencing,
But I mean, yeah, when you're growing up in an environment where you're adjacent to misuse or use of drugs, period. I mean, obviously at some point you are going to be subject to that as well.
I'm going to give Kelly 3 points for the word adjacent.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Let's not choke on our vocabulary. I'll try to do the
Right.
same. Okay, it happens to me often.
Right.
I'm always using like big words that I don't know what they
Oh
actually
yeah,
mean.
you did that. You did that on your live. I saw that on
Oh
your
my
Instagram
goodness,
live.
so
You were talking about and then all of a sudden you were like, I don't really know. Oh, I think it was symbiotic or symbiosis.
I don't know how to say
That
it.
was
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That was it. And you were like, I don't know what that word means.
So
or
funny.
you didn't know how to pronounce it.
I will say this though, like in active addiction,
Mhm.
I didn't have any vocabulary.
Oh,
I couldn't
right.
even string sentences together. I really couldn't in the end, especially. I really, really couldn't. Like my whole vocabulary was just this long laundry list of drugs that I used and then how much money it cost to be with me. And that was it. Like that was the whole extent of all the words that I used.
Right.
So the fact that I can like come onto a podcast and hold a conversation
Oh,
and
yeah.
like talk about my experience. Like,
No, and I think you're
eloquent way,
actually very articulate as well because I really
it's a
enjoyed
miracle.
your
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's definitely from a power greater than myself. I
Right.
got nothing to do with this. That much I know.
That's what's up.
So yeah, so my family, like just very chaotic. I saw that my parents, like whenever they were experiencing an emotion, it didn't matter what kind of emotion. It could be joy and elation, or it could be depression and sadness. But they would smoke something or take a pill or they would drink something and their emotion changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made all these mental notes and I was like, the second that I can do that, I'm going to do that too.
Right.
But I'm going to do it better. Or so I thought. I didn't.
Right.
I did not, by the way. And my parents, I watched their dis-ease of addiction progressed throughout the course of their lives as well. And, as a small child, I was completely unaware. And then as I started to get older, I saw what was happening.
Well, I mean, growing up as a child, that was your normal. You didn't know anything.
Right,
You didn't know any
exactly.
better. You had nothing to
Def-
compare to, except for your
Absolutely.
own situation.
Definitely. Yeah. And like we moved like once a year. We were constantly being evicted. We stole our groceries. Like we would steal electricity from the neighbor, like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
all of that was just very normal. This was just like what normal life was.
It
And when I
was
was,
like an episode of Shameless.
oh my God, that was definitely my
That
life.
was your
Yes,
family.
yes.
Well, so what were you, I mean, was there a DOC that your parents had, or were they just everything, or just more people?
Yeah, well, so my parents, this was like the height of the Oxycontin epidemic when
Ah,
in like the late 2000s when things started to get really, really bad.
Yep.
The early 2000s into, the latter part of it. And I just actually watched this show called Dope Sick. It's on Hulu.
mm.
And man, it
Yeah,
just
Michael
brought up like,
Keaton.
oh
I
man,
love
it
that
brought
show.
up so much for me, so
Mm.
much because that was my life back then, like so yeah, definitely my parents were like pill heads and they
Mm.
would doctor shop and like my dad was kind of like a dumpster for drugs, but my mom really just kind of stayed in that prescription
A
pill sort
dumpster
of
for
thing.
drugs.
Yeah, just like
I love
just like
that.
me. I am exactly like
It's
my
like
father,
you're
the
like
exact
you.
same thing.
We all have that friend that'll just pick up a pill off the ground and like, oh,
Right, right.
let's see what this
Out of a
does.
toilet. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's me.
Right.
That was definitely me. So
Okay.
yeah, like my parents, they just were really going through it. Like they were facing another eviction, the lights were turned off, the gas was turned off, the phone was turned off. And they made this and they were going through withdrawal at the time. They had ran out of pills, which happened every month. And it was always like the end of the world every time that it happened because of the withdrawal, the benzo withdrawal, the painkiller withdrawal. And it was epic. And so in October of 2007, they made a decision that they needed to stop their suffering, they needed to stop using drugs. And the only way that they knew how to do that was what they did, and they ended up committing suicide with one another.
Wow. So they had like a suicide pact, huh?
Yeah, yeah, they did.
Mm.
Yeah, they
And
intentionally
about what
overdosed.
year was this, and how old were you?
Yeah, this was 2007. I
Mm.
was 23. My
Mm.
sister was 18.
Okay.
And
Were you
we
looking
found
after your
them.
younger sister as well?
My sister lived with my parents, but she happened to be staying at my house. Like it was my weekend from work. And so she was hanging out at my house. And, like there was no lights turned on in my parents' house. So, and there was no hot water, there was no gas. So
Mm-hmm.
after her first night staying with me, my dad had called. And this is probably like around the time that they started to take the overdose of pills. And my dad said, hey, just stay at your sister's. Like there's nothing for you to do here. There's no internet, there's no
Ah.
electricity. Just stay there while you can.
Mm.
And then the next day when we tried to call them like on their little prepaid cell phone because the
Right.
phone was turned off,
Yeah, of
no
course.
answer all day, no answer, no answer. And eventually we just went over there
Mm.
and yeah, we found them. And
Oh
they
wow.
left these very brief notes. And like the whole scene of the suicide was just so intense, and it was just like pills everywhere,
Mm.
everywhere. These big, huge prescription pill bottles, pills poured everywhere, like a bottle of rum in the corner. There was a small fire because there was no electricity. My parents had lit a candle to carry out their plan, and then the candle caught a lamp on fire, which caught the wall on fire.
Wow.
And it eventually extinguished itself by the time that we got there. But
Mm-hmm.
because there was a fire in the house, the smoke alarms were going off. And so it was just like this insanely traumatic scene to walk into, like
Yeah.
with the sound effects and everything,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wow. Well, I mean
Yeah.
that's like, yeah, how do you even recover from that?
Yeah,
Or
definitely. Well,
or process that.
yeah, I
Mm.
didn't for like over a decade.
Mm.
Like I just kept using. Like in this moment of, like being instantly orphaned, my addiction stepped in to become my parent.
Right.
And it became my whole identity.
Mm.
Like everything
Yeah.
about me was about using, because I had this huge gaping wound inside of me of abandonment and hurt and rejection. And, like I just could not cope with my experience. And, I think I needed drugs for a certain amount of time to get through a trauma like that.
Well, I mean,
And
I honestly, it sounds like your life was pretty rough to start off, and then it just progressively got worse.
And I think that's just a reflection of the disease of addiction.
Right.
Because I have this whole family of addicts, it's like, of course, life is going to get progressively worse, because that's what the disease does, is it just picks up steam. And yeah, so I'm covered in tattoos of liquor bottles and packs of cigarettes, and this was my whole identity. I was a party girl through and through.
Yeah, I've got in post. I'm gonna post. I'll throw up a picture of you because I've seen some of your before and afters. And it's like this picture, of you right now. It's like you're all cute, Betty Page, tattoos, everything like that. But and I was like, holy crap, man! The before,
yeah, man,
yeah, the before is definitely rough. So I'll cut that in for sure.
Definitely, cool. Yeah, the disease of addiction is no joke, man.
Right.
And it was like a whole nother entity was living inside of me, just really keeping me super pushed down, keeping my spirit completely asleep and sedated. And yeah, my disease of addiction had progressed over the course of my life. I've hit bottom on every drug imaginable, and I did a lot of substituting in my life. I thought, okay, well, alcohol ruined this part of my life, so now I'll just do cocaine. Okay, right. Cocaine did this to me, so now I'll just do pills. Okay, there's no pills, so now I turn to heroin. And I had an opiate addiction for over 20 years. Pills turned into heroin one day, and then that just became my whole life, and it was always some part of my life.
Right.
But the last couple of years of my active addiction, I began doing a drug that I hadn't done since I was a teenager, which was methamphetamine.
Oh, good times. I hear that stuff's really good for your teeth.
Oh yeah. These are paid for. These teeth.
All right.
most of these come out and
nice.
go back in. And I'm really grateful for recovery for allowing me to buy some teeth in my life, because meth really took me to a place that I didn't know existed.
You had the proverbial summer teeth. Have you ever heard of that term before?
No, I haven't. What does it mean?
Yeah, summer here and summer there.
That is exactly right.
Sorry, that's a dad joke.
Love dad jokes. But yeah, that particular substance, it took me to a place that I didn't know existed. And it just destroyed me, and so quickly. And if you don't have any experience with that drug, I'm so happy for you. It was invented in Nazi Germany, and Hitler was on meth. So that'll give you a little scope of what it's like. It's genocidal. It's insane.
Yeah, well, that's why they called it, the kamikazes in the World War II. That's what they would take. They would just be hopped up on meth, and then, hey, let's just crash and burn, literally.
Yeah. It was. It really made my
life.
Well,
and Hitler, I think, was a meth head too. Because he had those,
she was just saying.
He had those shakes.
He was on all sorts of stuff. They made Desoxin and all this other stuff that they were shooting him up with all the time. It's kind of no wonder that he went on such a crazy path.
He also did have a veterinarian as a doctor.
Yeah.
Which is a fun fact.
They literally invented drugs for him to take.
Yeah.
They did.
It's crazy.
They certainly did. And meth was one of those drugs.
Wow.
And in the 1930s, amphetamines they were used as antidepressants. And
sure,
that's one way to look at it.
Hey, why don't you go clean your house like a good
right.
Oh, man.
And I could go into a very long rant about the prescribed way of life that we have now with stimulants.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of they're just unless you get a good doctor, a good nurse practitioner that actually pays attention to you and actually takes the mental part of the puzzle and puts that in. Most of the time they're going, okay, you're depressed. okay, take this. You're this. Take this, and they already have their formula down of what they're going to prescribe. Well, especially in rehab for me.
That's the quickest solution, right? It's like instead of doing the inner work, like tell you what, why don't I just take a pill so I don't feel that way? Oh, I feel this way now that I take this pill. Let me take another pill.
Right.
And it's fucked, man.
Yeah.
Ooh, I got a big resentment against Big Pharma. I will say that. It took me a long time to write about it in my fourth step.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that could be like a whole nother episode. But yeah, like for me, like my addiction, it became my whole, it was just my everything. And like, I had spent so long making this mistake that I was like, there's no way that I'm going to let go. Like, I will not let other people know that they were right and I was wrong. Like, I'm going to ride this out until I can't ride it out anymore. And so I became very prepared to die. I was just like, this is how I'm going to live and this is how I'm going to die. And I'm going to love every minute of it. I was very, very vocal about my drug use. I used to have an Instagram just devoted to it. It was like I would go on Instagram Live, I would smoke meth for an hour, and I would just be like absolutely insane, crazy, like eating psychedelics and like thinking that I was so smart.
Right.
It's so cool. and then I had this near-death experience where the universe was like, guess what? You're wrong about everything you think you know. And now you're gonna have to like be this totally different person. So yeah,
why don't we talk about that? Like, walk us through. Okay, because I know you mentioned earlier that during the NDE you were explained to, and I've heard this more than once, that you basically chose your life and chose all these hardships. So let's talk about that, and then also what the rest of the NDE experience was like.
Sure. Yeah. Let me give you the Cliff Notes version of it.
Right.
So yeah, like I had this experience where basically like every single one of my chakras, and I didn't know what a chakra was at the time. I was like in complete spiritual unawareness, but we have a spiritual body in this earthly form. It's created of 7 energy centers. And I had this life force energy awakening where every single one of my energy centers, my chakras, were opened and activated at the exact same moment. So I had this surge of energy going up and down my body. And as my third eye and my crown chakra opened, my spirit shot out of my head and went into this space of eternity. And I was greeted there by my father. He guided me through most of my experience. And like it morphed into every masculine energy that I've ever really encountered. And yeah, I was kind of like set in front of this table of beings. And they had this big fat book and they were thumbing through it. And they're like, you're not finished. You're not finished. You have to go back. Welcome home, but you got to turn around. And I was like looking all around me and I'm like, you're not talking to me, are you? Like, I'm home, like I'm staying.
Right.
And they said, nope, you got so much left to do. And they downloaded me with my pre-birth plan. So they showed me that I, as a soul, had actually chosen all of the adversity in my life. And all my opportunity to overcome as well. And I'll just tell you what that looked like. Mm-hmm. So it looked a lot like a video game to me. And that could be because of the generation that I'm born in, or because of the fact that we're living in a simulation, whatever you pick.
Okay.
And there was this grocery store and there was this man and he had this big empty grocery cart. And he said, okay, pick your life. And on the walls of the grocery aisles were these big, huge cereal boxes. And each cereal box had a life experience in it. And so like, I'm thinking about coming to Earth and like, I'm here for this earthly mission. And I just start grabbing every single box that I could get my hands on.
I'll take a box of heroin. I'll take a box of meth. And
right. Addiction, poverty, picking my parents, picking my family line, like sexual trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma. And then I picked all of these experiences that I hadn't gotten to yet, like overcoming, recovery, spiritual awakening, being an author, being a speaker, like all of these amazing things, but none of them have happened yet in my life. So none of them resonated. So I just thought, wow, those are beautiful cart fillers.
Right.
And, so I'm taken through the details of this. And in the moment of being shown this knowledge, I instantly shifted out of my victim mentality and I rose into my divinity as the co-creator of my experience. Things had no longer happened to me. They had happened for me. because on some soul level, I had chosen it for the evolvement of myself. Now, my human, this version of me, cannot understand why sexual trauma would be something that would evolve my spirit. But now I have this very deep belief that all is working in divine right order, and I don't have to question why certain things happen in my life, or in the lives of others.
Right.
There's some sort of master plan at play that I and my human awareness cannot comprehend. So yeah, that, like that belief really gave me a lot of freedom. And when I came back from that experience in heaven, like I just wrote it off as drug-induced psychosis. Like I was like, wow, that was crazy. I will never be that messed up ever again. That was nuts. And then, my higher power, which I choose to call source energy, source stepped in this very loud, tangible way to show me that my experience was a true one. And I really had to step onto my mission and start to transmute the energy of my life and step onto my spiritual
Didn't
path.
you have a part of your story was like when you were kicking and as far as heroin or something like that?
And then So when I came back from this experience,
like
all of my drug dealers all of a sudden decided to stop selling drugs simultaneously. Men that did not know each other, they all made a decision at the exact same moment to stop
selling. And you probably had about at least 3 or 4 plugs, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I was set up, and I had my backups had backups and all that stuff, I was a junkie, of course,
Sure.
And now all of a sudden, every single person that I'm calling, they're all telling me that they're out of the game, and I'm shocked.
Yeah.
And so now I have nothing. And I was in withdrawal. I was on day 3 of withdrawal, which if you are an opiate, if you have been an opiate addict, you know how painful that is. It's the worst. It's your bones are made of fire and your skin feels like broken glass, and it's chills and sick all over yourself and fever and sweating. And I had this moment where I knew that I was experiencing what my parents must have been experiencing. And I thought, how am I going to get myself out of this situation? The only thing that I can do is kill myself. That's the only way that I can make this pain stop. And in that moment, I heard this very loud voice in my mind, and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And, I was in the throes of desperation, writhing in pain. So I was like, okay, strange voice, I'll bite. I want to no longer be physically dependent on heroin. And I counted back from 10, and I laid back, and I saw these 2 little men appear in my mind's eye, and they were wearing these white lab coats, and then these little lawnmowers manifested in front of them. And I'm looking at them, they're looking at me, and I'm very inquisitive, what's going on? And then I watch them take off in different directions, and they start walking through the crevices of my mind. And as they're walking through, I feel these intense hot tingles. And they're mapping out every single piece of my brain. And I feel my pain receptors being restored to their original state. I feel a plunger on the crown of my head. And as it plunged down and came back up, there was this bright white flash, and I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of withdrawal. Wow. I mean, moments before, I was sick all over myself, welcoming death. And then in one instant, I was completely well and healed.
Right.
And I mean, it was, I threw myself on the ground. I was crying out to whoever was listening.
Right.
And I said, how could this be happening? I don't believe in this. I don't believe in you. You could not have picked a more unworthy subject to bestow this kind of grace on. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
For the contrast, I was a drug addict. I was a prostitute. I was a liar, a manipulator, a thief. I was an atheist. I was an orphan to suicide. I was a racist. I was a rapist. I was all the things that you would think would not make you worthy of grace.
Sure.
And there I was, and I was just enveloped inside of it. And, after that, obviously, I thought I was the second coming of Jesus.
Are you going around trying to heal people?
Oh, yeah. I went out on the New York City subway system. I was laying hands on homeless drug addicts. I was I have the power. And I was totally insane, really crazy. And, I hadn't integrated this experience. All I knew was that I had this newfound faith. Something magical had happened to me. If magical things could happen to me, they are literally available to anybody. I said, I did not feel worthy of this, you know, and I realized that we are all infinitely worthy. If I'm worthy, I know everybody else is. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, like then my path, like as the dust settled, it started to become a little bit clearer. I realized that I wasn't the Messiah. And I found myself on this train, and a man, it was an empty train car in New York City, which by itself is completely bizarre. And then this man steps onto the train and he sits right across from me. When there's a whole car of empty seats to sit, he chooses to sit right across from me. Uh-huh. And I realize that around his neck, he's wearing a 12-step fellowship necklace.
Right.
And I hear a voice and it says, "That's your path. Follow him to a meeting." And that was the day that I started counting days clean. And,
wow.
You know, now I wear my own 12-step fellowship necklace just in case I can be that angel for somebody.
You can actually be that beacon of light.
Hey, man.
Yes.
Hey, man, look at this bracelet, man.
All right.
It's right there, man.
Nice. I love it.
I took it from my work, and they're going to get mad at me, but it's okay.
Oh, there you go. Along with all the other nightclub things we went to yesterday.
Yeah,
we went to about 5-day parties yesterday. Hey, speaking of that, dude, let's throw to commercial real quick.
Yep.
We got Max the Axe with thispinklawyer.com. If you go to thispinklawyer.com, it will take you to Lone Star Injury Attorneys. He is a fantastic personal injury attorney and a friend of the show, and he supports us. So hit up Max the Axe, This Pink Lawyer, shoot him an email, and he will definitely get back to you. He practices in Texas and in California. So, and then also we have, I don't know if you have that ready, but the Big Texas Rally is happening here. A Big Texas Rally for Recovery is happening September 9th. And that is from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that is on 3107 South Boulevard, and that is in Dallas. So that's September 9th. Chad and I are going to be there, and we don't know. I'm actually going to be emceeing the event. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then I don't know which personality Chad will have show up that day.
So it is a Big Texas Rally for Recovery, and I say everything is bigger in Texas, and this was going to be huge.
So anyway, but it's going to be fun. Check it out. If you just Google Big Texas Rally for Recovery, you'll see something pop up, and they actually have a link tree for it. So if you're familiar with Linktree, definitely visit that. And I already know what you were thinking, Chad. There's an inside joke we have about Linktree.
Dude, I went to your Linktree the other day, dude. It just sent me straight to a picture of your dong, dude.
I love it. I love how we can class up the show. Hey, and then we also have a new EP out.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have that queued up there, Capitan. But this one is out, and actually by the time this airs, it should be streaming on all major platforms, but right now it is exclusively available. I forgot to check where we were. We charted yesterday.
Yeah, man.
Wasn't that exciting?
Yeah.
Wasn't that fun?
I just love that song so much.
It makes me want to party. So anyway, but yeah, that's what we do in our other non-day job.
Yeah.
Pipe dream hustle.
Yeah, man.
Right?
It's tangible.
Right. No, I agree. No, hold on. And we are going to get to that because speaking of positive manifestation, I've actually been practicing some of this or trying to implement some of this in my own personal journey as far as, positive affirmations and things like that. But I know you actually are a coach in this, correct, Betty?
Yes. Thank you for the plug.
No
I
problem.
am. I am a coach. I think the really really maybe a little bit misunderstood part about manifesting is it's not just about like positive mental attitude or positive affirmations. We have to process our trauma. We have to process the blocks that we have out of our awareness so that we can actually call in the vibration of what it is that we truly desire. So like for me, I had some issues like manifesting financial abundance and like a home. I was homeless for a year and a half. I lived inside of a rehab because I was so attached to my poverty mentality because I had been programmed that way my whole life. So I had to do a whole reprogramming of that part of my mentality so that I could actually welcome in financial abundance and a home and safety and security. And so, yeah, there's some work that goes along with it as well.
Right. Yeah. It's not just, oh, I'm going to write this down and read it, you know, but I mean, I think, well, from what I've heard is actually you have to, you know, say it and then believe it and sit in that moment for a while. And, you know, but there's all kinds of stuff you can look up. But if you want Boot Up Eddie as your personal coach, that is that is a possibility, people. And then also, so I guess we were talking about your NDE.
And then her entry into the 12-step program by the unnamed gentleman in the train car.
Yeah. Okay, but we were also talking about the NDE. So, like, I mean, if you had to say, like, what was your what was your big takeaway from what we have to expect in the afterlife is what I wanted to get to.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's rad.
Okay.
But I think it might also be slightly boring. Sometimes I don't have better language for it, but I feel like, okay, so we come from this vibration of unconditional love and joy and happiness. And like that probably gets boring after a while, which is why we decide to come to Earth, to come into human form and experience like, you know, the dumpster fire that Earth can be at times on this journey. And but you know, like the afterlife is, you know, yeah, it's real reality. What we're experiencing here is just a video game.
Right. Well, like I think I also heard you say that it was almost like it's an amusement ride, that there's a huge line, but there's a huge line to get on it because everybody wants it, you know? And I like that analogy. Like you go on, you experience, and then you're off and you're back into reality, so to speak, or the real the real reality.
The real reality. Yeah. And like, you know, a roller coaster only lasts for like 40 seconds. And it's much like that. You know, we think that we're having a whole human life. But when I went back to the space of eternity, it was like my 35 years of life were 3 seconds. I couldn't even grab anything from my human life.
Because there's no linear timeline.
Right.
And then, okay, so did you come away with anything? I'm just going to throw a couple things at you. With a purpose in life, and then how we are all interconnected. I know those.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so my purpose in life is to tell you about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm just kidding.
All right.
Do you got a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ?
Right.
So my purpose in life is to follow my passion. And I think the same thing. I'm not going to speak this truth for everybody because that would be, you know, like that would be ridiculous. But I will say just for me in my own journey, my purpose is to follow my passion. And here's the really cool thing about that. My passion changes. So like, I hear so many people, they're like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? You know, like they want like just this little sentence like this here is your name tag. This is your purpose.
Right.
But it's not actually like that. You know, like my purpose is ever evolving and changing. But I will say that my purpose lies in my passion. What's my passion? Things that I could talk about for hours and never get tired of. What are those things? Myself, for one.
Oh, yeah, right.
I love talking about recovery. I love talking about spiritual awakening. I love talking about this great awakening that's happening on this grand scale. And so, you know, like that's where my passion really is. So my purpose is inside of there. And my purpose is always to be of service to others.
Okay, I love that.
You know, it's always to be of service to source, to the collective. And I do that in whatever way I can. It doesn't need to be something big and tangible. right? Like just smiling at a stranger on the street, that is an act of service for the greater good. Right. And so like, I can stay in my purpose at any given moment because of that.
Right.
For sure.
And then what did you, like as far as how we are all interconnected?
Yes. So everybody is a reflection of everyone else. Like you guys are a reflection of me. I'm a reflection of you. Congratulations. You're a hot chick.
Hell yeah.
I feel like that sometimes. Thank you.
I think I've always wanted to feel that way. Now I do.
Right.
But like, so for instance, whenever I get into a situation where I'm having a reflection or I'm interacting with somebody that is somebody that I do not want to interact with. I don't like their attitude. I don't like their behavior. I don't want anything
there's
to do
people
with
that
them.
you just don't like their energy when you get around them. It's like, it's a weird thing. Yeah, I've experienced that. It's just like, I automatically hate this person.
At a true spiritual core truth, that person is me. That person is you.
Right.
So like the reason why you detest them or you don't want anything to do with them is because this is a rejected part of yourself that you have to integrate. Like in it shouldn't bother me how somebody else is living their life.
Right.
It shouldn't bother me if somebody behaves in like a people-pleasing way or like a narcissistic way or like whatever label you want to put on it that's like unattractive. None of that should bother me, really, if I'm just focusing on myself and my own journey and like all of the beauty that I have in my experience in recovery. But that's not the case because like there's still unhealed parts of myself. I wouldn't even be able to perceive somebody who acts like that if it wasn't a piece of me. And so that's really the core teaching of that principle of the oneness of humanity.
Well, okay.
That every person.
That kind of can parlay into this question because I noticed, I know that you mentioned something about 17 months of reading sacred text. So what would those sacred texts be and what knowledge, I mean, if you can, what knowledge did you gain from that?
Yeah, so I was in treatment. I went into a long-term rehab, a women's facility, and I was there for 17 months.
Would you like to shout them out?
I don't know if I'm allowed to. Am I? Yeah. So it's a place called Serendipity 2 in Brooklyn, New York. It completely changed my life. Not because like it was some great rehab to be in, but because like I actually took the time to do the inner work while I was there. Because I didn't have to worry about food or shelter or clothing or anything.
Right.
All I had to do was just focus on myself. And like focus on building relationships and so like while I was there I took a lot of time to read because I had never used my brain before and I had this insatiable thirst for knowledge after the spiritual experience and just like realizing that I could have recovery, that it was attainable, and that I could do anything that I wanted now. I believed in manifesting and the power of the law of attraction immediately.
Right.
And so I knew that I could have whatever kind of life I wanted. And so I really started to dive into like the true nature of reality. I read everything I could get my hands on about metaphysics and the law of attraction. I read every sacred text that I could get my hands on. And a lot of them really spoke to me in these deep, profound ways. And at first I thought I had to devote myself to them, So like I became a Baptist. I like went to like this all Black Baptist church and I was like, I'm a Baptist now, And then after a while I was like, you know what, this doesn't actually fit me. This is too rigid for me. Like I need some open-mindedness. Like I need spiritual principles in my life. I read the Quran and I was like, I think I should be a Muslim. And then I was like, again, the rigidity, like I don't feel like faith is supposed to be rigid. And like so I read through all of these scriptures and at the bottom of all of them, like what I learned is the concept of the oneness of humanity, the concept of forgiveness and kindness, and the concept of spiritual principles. So like I live my life by spiritual principles today. Like my life is aligned with that. Like my spiritual experience showed me that I could do whatever I want in this life and I'm still going to get to heaven. Doesn't matter. But today I choose to live righteously. I choose to live aligned with spiritual principles because it feels good. This is like the best high that I've ever had in my whole life is like being of service to other people and being of service to source.
Right. Okay. And then also you had mentioned something. So, from your life experience and all that stuff, are you in the works of writing a book?
I am in the works of writing a book. Yeah.
How far along are we in those works?
I have like the skeleton of the book written.
Okay.
And I'm just getting into like writing the details, like I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, So
right.
I'm really calling on the help of others.
Well,
I'm receiving.
what I've seen, like, and what they say is just do like 15 minutes every day.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
And then all of a sudden, yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have a chapter done.
Yeah. So I have like so really what I would like the book, I mean, like Gabrielle Bernstein, she's an author that's in recovery and she's a spiritual teacher, and like her books completely transformed my life. And I would love to be an author like her.
Okay.
And so like now I'm trying to figure out like, like about sharing the story, because the story of my life is like, my soul is like this script writer who knows no limits, like is creating this Spanish novella with every sort of trauma and tragedy inside of it. And then all of
there you go.
And then all of these opportunities to overcome,
Uh-huh.
So I think the story of my life, like it's my soul's most sacred art. Like I am a writer. My soul is a script writer in this play of life where I'm the star of my play, you're the star of your play. And so I'm just kind of tapping into that energy. But yeah,
okay.
like my goal is to be an author.
And well, I can't wait. I will personally buy that book, and I will I will listen to the audio version.
One copy sold. Perfect.
And I'll have Chad read it as Morgan Freeman. Go ahead, Chad. Give her a sample.
Oh, man. When talking about spiritual experience, we have to bring in the word God.
See, I got it. And
that's pretty good.
Seriously, he's he is way cheaper than Morgan Freeman. So. Well, I'm
not about to be. Dude.
You actually.
I'm realizing my self-worth right now just by how you said that.
You actually will be Chad Freeman.
Yeah, that'll be. That will be $783 for 20 seconds of my time.
I love that. Hey, so and then you were also talking about how 12 steps, and we like to talk about this as far as like what was a huge part of your recovery, but it sounds like that the 12-step program, why don't you talk a little bit about how that was such a positive experience on your recovery?
Yes, 12-step fellowship is what keeps me centered in recovery for sure. And there's like a bunch of suggestions when you get into 12-step. They tell you to get a home group, to get a sponsor, to get a network. They don't tell you how awkward all of those things are, like as this newly clean version of yourself. Like it was so interesting because in active addiction, I would call up a stranger for drugs, no problem.
Right.
Like, hey, there's just a strange phone number. Hello, how are you? Like, I need this.
Right.
But if I had to call up somebody like to, share a vulnerable piece of myself or be like, hey, I'm new in recovery. Can you help?
Right.
It was like I was chewing glass the whole time. Like, no, I can't do it,
Yeah.
So it's all very awkward because it's all outside of my comfort zone. As an addict, my comfort zone is to use and to isolate and to be depraved. And so like doing all of these suggestions that 12-step offers, which is really about connection, connection being the antidote to addiction. And so like I had to put myself out there. I got a sponsor, I work steps, I'm of service to the fellowship. I make a meeting a day. I still do. I'm over 4 years into this process because these are the people that I want to be around. Like one of the greatest tips in early recovery is to stay away from people, places, and things.
Right.
But for me, it's not just about staying away from those people, places, and things. I got to get new people, places, and
right.
things.
Well, and what I always say is like build your tribe or, find your community. And then you have that kind of built-in support unit that you can always turn to other than calling random people for drugs on phones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. It's very awkward. The whole thing is very awkward. It's supposed to feel that way because it's brand new. And
you're also talking about yourself and you're also vulnerable. And then also if you have like any kind of hang up with public speaking, oh my God, dude, I'm terrified,
Yeah, there's little meetings. And, now that we
Right.
have the virtual platform since the pandemic, like for me, that's what helped me like come into NA and like really get a foundation because I would just keep my camera off and I would just kind of like hang out in the periphery
Mm-hmm.
until I finally felt comfortable enough to like start sharing. And I would find small meetings where I didn't feel like I was sharing too much of myself with too many people.
Right.
And, like now I'm just like out there for anybody. I'm
Oh,
like,
well, yeah,
hey.
obviously. Okay, now, being a good host, watch this. Watch how excited Betty gets to talk about this. There's something called, you also work in recovery, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in recovery, they have something called MAT, which is medically aided treatment, which I know you were passionate about when we were doing the pre-interview. And then also Chad has experienced MAT as well. And I would like to, y'all have a dialogue regarding that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, dude. Surprise.
So, yeah, I'm an RA in treatment at a treatment center for teenagers. And it's like one of the only ones in the state. It's certainly one of the only ones that takes state funding, which is never caught back up with the rise of inflation and everything else. That's a whole new set of issues. But yeah, I was on medication assisted treatment with like buprenorphine and stuff like that, and then eventually I was able to get off of it, which was like the best thing that ever happened
I
to
think
me.
that's the end goal of it, but I think where Betty is on that, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they advocate for that. I mean, I think it's like, here, take this, and you might be taking it for the rest of your life. Or what's your 2 cents on that, Betty?
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing, Chad, and letting me get to know a little bit about you. And I work in a medicated assisted treatment center in Harlem, New York. And, like I was also in a methadone program for many years of my active addiction because, like, I got arrested and they were like, you have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I have a very big resentment against Big Farm. It's something that I'm still processing and trying to work through. But yeah, I do see a lot. I don't really see a lot of resources in medicated assisted treatment clinics for people to actually begin to do like their weaning off and re-entering sort of society in some way. And so, yeah, I do have like my own personal opinions about it because I saw what it did to my own life as well. But I do think that it is an alternate route to recovery. And so I support it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I also am a member of an abstinence-based 12-step fellowship. So, I truly believe that abstinence, is the best way. I see it work in thousands of people's lives just in my area alone.
Yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
know like hundreds of thousands of lives are, like around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that like it is something that I think is a great tool.
Mm-hmm.
If you are interested in sort of like that slow,
The wean.
right, the
Right.
wean,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like I've seen people take the stuff for years, and like it works for some people, and that's just every medication, right? Something's going to be perfect for somebody, but for me in my story, like it's just it has to be like nothing. I'm all or nothing kind of guy, man.
Well,
I'm going to do too much if I have all of it.
I have a question for both of y'all.
Too much nothing if I have nothing, So
right,
it's one way or the other. It can't be both for me.
So you were on buprenorphine. Is that Suboxone?
Yeah, buprenorphine. Dude, I was on all sorts of shit. Buprenorphine, Lexapro, at a dose that they said they shouldn't even give me, and then Seroquel and fucking
Seroquel
and Trazodone to fall asleep because I was like a fucking,
Seroquel, dude.
I was taking enough stuff to kill horses.
Old
you know
Quillville,
what I mean?
dude.
And yeah, I had to get off.
But so then,
and
then
stuff.
Betty, you said methadone, right?
Yeah, I was in a methadone program for about 3 years.
And did you ever?
But I was still using other drugs. I was still using.
Right. Well, that's really not kind of how it's designed. But I hear methadone is really, really tough to kick as well.
Oh hell yeah.
So
yeah,
is it?
Well, I mean, everything is. And, not only are there physical addictions to these particular like opiate and opioid blockers that we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but, there's this mental addiction. Like, addiction. Okay. So, one of the tools that I use in my own recovery process is that I have named my addiction
Okay.
and I have given him a face and a name. He's a man,
Oh,
he's
let's
a gay
hear
man.
what.
His name is Richard, and
Okay.
What a dick.
he's part of me.
Richard, what a dick.
Right. He is quite the dick.
Right.
And he lives inside of me, like he is a piece of me. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
is that my addiction is going to grab at anything that it can.
Mm-hmm.
Like and it's so mentally consumed with making me think that I am it. My addiction wants me to believe that I am nothing but my addiction. And it's just not true. Like I'm actually a divine spirit, and my addiction is just one facet of this human that I'm spending this earthly experience with. So, like not only is there a physical dependency to these substances that we're talking about, including the medicated assisted treatment, but the mental addiction
Mm-hmm.
is really what it is. And like, I don't know if we're as well versed with the therapy for combating addiction that we need to be, like that's being taught to social workers right now,
No, it
which is
all
why I'm
needs to
so glad
change.
that peer services are available. Like
Yeah.
in New York right now, it's absolutely mandatory that every substance use disorder clinic or treatment center have a peer on staff. And, like that's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm there to do, to just be like that testimony that like, hey, it actually works. Like there's freedom.
Sure.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I love it. And then, so like, I always like to, have the guest give an opportunity. Like, if somebody out there is struggling, what first steps can they take, or what would you recommend to, somebody in general that's passively listening to this?
Sure. All you have to do is die, have a near-death experience.
There you go.
It'll all go
Perfect. Right? And then it's all unicorns and rainbows after that, right?
First steps, reach out for support. If you don't have anybody to reach out for support with, reach out to me. Like my information will be in the liner notes of this episode. Like really, truly, you can reach out just to this one individual for support, and I will point you in the right direction. Like one of the great gifts of recovery for me today is that I have become this awesome resource broker.
Mm-hmm.
People have an issue, I have a resource. I don't know how it happened in my life, but I have this whole card catalog in my mind of places and just like resources for people to have. I highly suggest making your way to a 12-step meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not clean or you're not sober, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
let
I was
people-
going to them fully loaded.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let you get connected to people, and just maybe you'll hear something that you need to hear in order to put you on your path. Like for me, I found the program director of the rehab that I went to inside of a meeting.
Right.
And that's how I started my journey into that program. And so like, you never know who you're going to meet in there. Like somebody might have that little pearl of wisdom that you're waiting for, but really connection is the antidote to addiction. Get connected, like the same way that you would call up a stranger for drugs, call up a stranger to help you with recovery. And there's just so many resources out there.
Right.
So.
And I also like to point out some of the other recovery assets. Like if you're freaked out by, the 12 steps, because some people think, they've either had a bad experience with one room. I'm like, well, try another room. And the good thing about them is they're everywhere. But then also there's also, all kinds of different recovery, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's recovery Dharma. There's all kinds of resources out there. So definitely just, I always, just say reach out, or, reach out to me, because, people have hit me up, regarding, being sober curious, so to speak.
Yeah, Kelly doesn't do shit anyways. All he does is sit around and watch fart videos and send me dog stuff on Instagram.
like fart porn videos, or
no. Just like like we have a whole collection on Instagram that's just random fucking farts that he sends me. Especially that one chick that farts into tubes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, this will all be edited out, so it's all good. Thank you, Chad. No, it's all good. So any kind of shout outs you would like to give anybody, or anything you would like to plug?
I would like to say that my handle on social media is Buddha Betty on everything. I'm on Facebook, Instagram,
And how is
and
that
YouTube.
spelled? Is that BHUDDA? Okay.
Buddhabetty. And yeah, I also have access to my calendar on my social media platforms. If you are interested in having a session, if you're interested in spirituality, health and wellness, finances, career, yeah, I've been able to utilize the law of attraction in my own life. And so I can definitely help you do it in yours. If I can do it, anybody can. And just, yeah, a shout out to you guys for creating this beautiful space. And
Right.
thank you for celebrating recovery and recovering out loud. I think it's so important for us to like stand in our recovery truth because it gives other people the permission to do the same in
I
theirs.
agree, and that's the whole thing. I did it is because like I didn't realize there was all these assets and resources and all that stuff, and I was like, man, if I just would have known, maybe I could have used this, and maybe the struggle window could have been a little bit shorter.
If we don't get to use our experience to help other people, then what the fuck do we go through it for? You know?
Exactly. There is purpose in the pain. There
Yeah,
is definitely purpose in the pain.
for
Right.
sure.
Well, Betty, it was a pleasure to have you on, and I love you. I love the fact that you shared your experience and you're open with that, and I can't wait for that book.
Thanks so much, guys. This was
Yeah.
really beautiful. Appreciate
All
you.
right, and I will get with you as far as when this airs and all that stuff. But thanks again for coming on, Chadwick. As always, thank
Yeah.
you for running the board for us. Remember, kids, there is no magic pill for sobriety because if there was, we would all take too many.